Welcome back, everyone, to OpenLine, talking about breast cancer in advance of a major event on Saturday. And I want to hammer that home again, but what time is it and what's going to happen on Saturday? So
Maryland Farms, we're going to have a big walk, lots of people, and it will start at 7 a.m. The village opens, and the village is, all of our sponsors are out there, and you can go learn about the disease and walk around and visit with folks. We have the survivor walk at 8:15, and then 9 o'clock we kick off with the actual walk. And it's a 2-mile walk, so it's not a long distance.
2-mile walk,
yep.
Not a long distance. A lot of great fellowship, really.
Absolutely. A
lot of great just getting to talk to people and really be uplifted.
And it's so much fun because people come in costumes. You've got men and women in pink tutus and lots of beads and wigs on, and just it's a fun day. It makes you laugh, and it makes you also realize the seriousness of the disease and what we have to do, but it's also a lot of fun.
And what I've enjoyed hearing about is that we are making progress.
Absolutely.
That's great. We had a caller who did not want to go on air, but she asked about inflammatory breast cancer. That was her question. Doctor, what about that?
So inflammatory breast cancer is a relatively rare subtype of breast cancer, but it's also one of the most aggressive. And it's really hallmarked by, as the name suggests, inflammation. And so the breast, the classic description of it is what we call peau d'orange, or orange peel skin. And that's kind of a good descriptor. And if you look at it, it's almost like there's, it's got that same type of texture and dimpling. And it's usually red and very inflamed. And so under the microscope, if we actually take that type of breast cancer out, it looks like it's actually invading through the skin, and there's a lot of inflammation with it as well. So that's one of the few types of breast cancer where automatically patients are going to get chemo right up front. We don't do surgery up front for those patients. We try to actually control the disease first using chemotherapy. And if we get that under control, and many of those patients we can, then they go and proceed with the rest of their care, surgery, and often radiation as well.
You had asked before about progress that's been made, you know, over 10 years, and I would say even the 20, and it's been profound. Even if you do have chemotherapy, that looks a lot different today than it did before. And you said some really encouraging words today, that a lot of the studies now are looking at how to decrease the amount of chemo we're giving.
That's right.
To see how can we get those numbers down so you don't have to do as much or as frequently. So there's a lot of options out there still. So even if you have to have chemo, it's not that chemo that existed, you know, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. It looks different. How it's given to you, the drugs they have to manage side effects, just the people that are there to support you, it looks really different, and I think it's really encouraging. So don't let that stop you. Don't get too bogged down in that.
Well,
look for resources.
The
reach
difference
out.
too, my grandmother had breast cancer back in the, I guess, the 70s, and when she had it, it was just an automatic mastectomy.
Yeah, that's right.
There was no lumpectomy. I mean, and I don't remember the type. I was young and I didn't live in the same town, so I don't know all of her details, but it's very different than it would be today.
It's a radical mastectomy then. I mean, they would have taken like part of your chest wall, you know. So I mean, in the reconstruction options,
she didn't even have that.
Right. So I mean, it's really, it's been a tremendous amount of change.
I said it's almost ironic, but breast surgeons want to do less surgery, and that's not only in the breast, but even in the sentinel lymph nodes, or the lymph nodes, because in the old days we'd pluck out as many as we could, or the surgeons would, but that had a price, and patients would often get what we call lymphedema. Very debilitating. Their arms would swell up, and you know, because they don't have the draining lymph nodes there anymore. And so breast surgeons are trying to do less breast surgery. Medical oncologists like myself, we're trying to give less chemotherapy, and we call that de-escalation. I just want to also highlight that the man who really put, breast surgeon who put lumpectomy on the map, sadly passed away a couple days ago, Bernie Fisher, and just to pay some homage to him, because he really was the champion of proving that lumpectomy with radiation is equivalent to mastectomy, and have given women a lot more options.
Wow,
that's amazing.
Fascinating.
Yeah. Quite a contribution.
And that's so great to hear. I guess 10 years from now, what is the goal? So we talked about where we were 10 years ago, or 20 years ago, or even longer. What would be ideal 10 years from now? And it's fascinating what your doctor said. Let's take it one day at a time, because we don't know the advances that are coming even tomorrow. But what about 10 years from now?
You know, my goal would be that if a patient gets diagnosed with breast cancer, there's no fear. I think we'll still always have breast cancer, because even with the best preventative strategies, you know, humans as a species, we're not very good. We were just talking about how, you know, not everyone's going to get their screening mammogram for whatever reason. We still have people who smoke cigarettes. So I think we need both. We need better preventive methods, but I also think that there will be a day where we can cure breast cancers, all breast cancers, and we're not going to have this kind of fear that because I'm diagnosed, even with metastatic disease, that's a death sentence. You know, I do tell patients metastatic disease is not a curable disease, but then I actually put in some caveats, which I told Namaste about. We all, as breast oncologists, have a number of patients out there who have defied the odds with metastatic biopsy-proven breast cancer and are still alive and doing well and don't have evidence of disease. And we're actually trying to study those patients because we want to know and learn what was it about their cancer that responded so dramatically to these drugs. And again, that's where I think the pivot points are going to happen, and we're really going to learn a lot through research. How do we actually cure and find those types of responses for everyone?
That's great. And what do you think of that goal?
Oh, it makes me excited. You know, the work that we do is just so important, and it just is so hopeful, especially when you hear these kinds of conversations, and it just brings back home the importance of the work that we do and why we're doing it. And I think another reason that Saturday is going to be such a special day is everybody actually gets to see firsthand and learn more about the disease. And you know, education's a big part of this, Ben. I think when people are educated, we've said several times, knowledge is power. But when people are educated and just have the facts in their hands, it makes such a difference. And one of the things Komen encourages people to do is to know your risk. There's a number of risk factors. I think probably in my earlier part of my life, I thought there were 2 or 3 risk factors. There's what, probably 20 or 30,
yeah.
There are lots of risk factors, everything from inherited genes, etc., to how early a woman or a young woman might have her first period. So there are a lot of factors that go into play. How much alcohol a woman, or man for that matter, but a woman drinks a day can influence. It's a risk factor that can change things. So there's actually quite a few risk factors also involved. And I think knowing those risk factors is really important.
Right. And I think that's like one of the things that ABC tries to do, and I think they do well, is educate women. It's after the fact, but still how to exercise, how to eat well, what your choices are, how to look for that lymphedema in your arm, which is what brought me there to the ABC program, is that I was diagnosed with lymphedema 10 years after my original breast cancer treatment. You know, so once you have a compromised lymph system, you're always at risk. So there's a certain amount of education that happens there, and I think it helps break down the fear. Mm-hmm. You feel like, okay, now I know how to do this. Now I know what I should or shouldn't eat. Now I know how to exercise. Now I know the signs to look for in case you get lymphedema. And so this whole conversation about fear, the more educated, the more you know, I think the less fearful you are. Mm-hmm. Especially if you feel like you're not doing that alone.
Mm-hmm. Right. I want to talk more about your program.
Yeah.
But we're going to take a break. If you want to call in, again, there's the number 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. Take a break. Be back right after this.